Christianity ended in 70 AD, part 5. God made man to replenish the earth. That word replenish is the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. It's the same thing as God saying, look, here's this tree. The day that you eat of it or touch it, you will die. Told them to be fruitful and multiply. That is fruit on the tree. That is the same thing as saying replenish the earth. And to say replenish is the knowledge of good and evil. Because God created man. He created them. He formed them new because whatever was here before was destroyed. So they had to replenish it. But he created them. They didn't know what death was. But whenever God says replenish the earth, that means something's been here before and it died. That's the knowledge of good and evil. How would they replenish the earth? Genitals. How would they be fruitful and multiply? Genitals. How would they have good and evil? Genitals. They had sex. They had children. What happens whenever you have children? Then you realize, oh my God, I'm naked. And you cover your genitals, right? Whenever you're a kid, you can just run around naked, nothing bothers you. Whenever you start realizing that you can produce life, whenever you become a teenager, or you're getting there and your hormones and you're realizing, then all of a sudden you realize, wait, if I can give life, I can kill life. And then your understanding comes, the knowledge of good and evil. You start wrestling. Then you say, oh my God, I'm naked. Why? Whenever Adam and Eve bore their own fruit, whenever they created on their own, whenever they replenished, in that day, death came. The same thing that gives us life, gives us death. If it wasn't for our parents and their relations, we wouldn't have life. If it wasn't for them, we wouldn't have death. In the Garden of Eden, it was light all the time. God's light shone. But now, we have the sun for times and seasons. We have half day, half night. They covered their genitals. They did not cover their mouths. They are a depiction of the garden, and in the midst of our bodies is the genitals, the tree of life, the thing that gives us life and gives us death. It is good and evil. So what happened whenever Eve did that? Her pain was increased in childbearing. What did Adam have to do? He had to work by the sweat of his brow to take care of the family that he had created. Then they were cursed with marriage. Whenever they coupled together, they were cursed with marriage. Before that, they were just Adam. God called them Adam. Before Eve did that, and he did that, took of it with her, and lusted, then she was called Eve, because she was the mother of all living. And Adam knew his wife, and bore a son, and called him Cain. They obeyed Satan's words. He was the tempter, and he was the accuser. He accused them because their flesh was not worthy to enter heaven. Nobody's flesh was worthy to enter heaven again. So as long as our flesh was weighed in the balance, nobody could enter heaven because there was enmity with the flesh. There was enmity between the serpent's seed and the woman's seed. God created man. God created Adam and Eve, right? You got God's seed, the spiritual. The spirit was taken up from them. They're down here in the flesh. The flesh seed came through Satan. He's the one that tempted them to create and have children. Therefore, anything born of flesh was flesh. Flesh and blood could not inherit the kingdom. Each person would have a battle inside of themselves. Each one. Cain was not always doing bad. But whenever Cain did bad, whenever he chose this life, didn't give the best of this life to God, then God said, hey, sin's lying at the door. It's going to have you, and you're going to be the master of it, right? You're going to be the one that everyone will remember because you gave up God for this life, all the way until unaliving your brother because he lost that battle. We bruise the serpent's head, and the serpent bruises our heel. So Adam and Eve created on their own, and whenever they did, they said, oh my God, we're naked. And they realized, if you can create life, you can destroy life. Then they had the knowledge of good and evil. And good and evil has always existed. There was already a tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Satan was already there. He could already choose evil. Evil existed before sin came. But Jesus Christ was God's plan from the beginning, and he would come to end sin, not evil. He did not come to end what God created. He came to end what Satan brought. God created good and evil. All the smart people on here are going to want to get into all this argument about this, semantics, whatever. God didn't actually make people do evil. He didn't create evil. Evil is just the separation of good. Lies don't exist. Lies are just the absence of truth. Truth actually exists. If you say something, that tree's right there. If I say it's a pine tree, that exists. If I say it's a fig tree, that's a lie. That's a fairy tale. It doesn't exist. Everywhere in the world, only where there is light, there is life. Anything between that is called space. Where there is nothing, where there is darkness. God separated the light from the darkness. He didn't like sit up there and say, I'm going to create evil too and make people do evil. No. Evil is our choice. It is a separation from God. It's a separation from truth. And that is what our choice is. And then people will say, well, it says increased in childbearing. So they were already bearing children. No, they weren't. If there was anybody born before the fall, then they wouldn't have been subject to this sin. Nobody was born until the fall of man. Had God been just telling them, hey, go reproduce, and they were out here reproducing until they sinned, then why wasn't anybody born before the fall? You got to understand, this was God's plan from the beginning. Increased in childbearing is that whenever you have a baby, you're up until your delivery, up until the time you deliver, it keeps getting worse and worse. More uncomfortable, more pain, more trouble, until you finally are delivered of the child. So God created man with Jesus in mind, and that is what this whole story is about, all the way up until today. That's what all these videos will be about. And we're going to start with the fall of man and Cain and Abel, and then go up to Noah, and we'll go to Moses, Abraham, Moses, through the law and the prophets, David, everything, till Jesus Christ, until he fulfilled everything, reconciled us back to the Father, until God's perfect plan was complete. And now we have access to the Father again. So give me a follow. Thanks.